Yep.
Blink, blink, everything blinks. Is it ready to go? Let everyone know that they're being recorded. More privacy info. I'm not sure how to start this one. That's a good introduction, isn't it? Denny, you're back, alive and well. I'm alive and well, and Sunday morning drinking my coffee. It's Saturday night where you are. Where are you these days? How's it going?
Yes, thank you. I'm alive and well. I'm in Simi Valley, California, northwest of Los Angeles, and the home of former American President Ronald Reagan.
Would most people know who that is? Why do you
Ronald
bring up
Reagan?
Ronald Reagan? Is it because Trump was recently unceremoniously ousted from the presidential office?
Oh, Ronald Reagan is one of the most known American presidents. He was the one who talked about the evil empire of the Soviet Union. And he was the one who came up with the genius idea of outspending the Soviets to make them go bankrupt and fail. And his idea worked. The only problem was it put the United States billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in debt.
Yeah, I know
Mission
you love
accomplished.
talking about money. Actually, we could talk about that in terms of the debt, because I think my view of it was that the states can do it. Well, I should not even so much my view. I think what they're doing is that because the U.S. dollar is the reserve currency of so many uh, places, and the commodities are traded in the U.S. dollar, that um, they can they control the finance. And what's happened recently, they're being accused of weaponizing the dollar. That's what Russia is doing, and that's what a lot of people are saying, is that you're weaponizing the dollar, you're inflating it by printing more money, and that brings the value. Does it make the value? It brings the value of it down, but it
Right.
increases the price of the U.S. dollar, which, so basically you're not able, prices are going up, but you're not able to buy as much.
Well, what's going on with the American dollar is, and what's being reflected in the markets around the world, is that almost everybody's currency is not worth anything. And with the weaponization of the dollar, the idea was you keep you keep it so that it is easier for people to try to buy your goods. All
Right.
right, the weaker your currency in theory, and all right, I'm of a very different school of thought on that. I think that having a strong currency is by and large good for your citizens.
You would
Um,
think. You would think.
and the argument usually is that that will hurt exports.
Okay.
But I think that's a very unsophisticated look at it. The Germans, okay, the Germans after West Germany after the end of World War II, it took them a while, but after the United States rebuilt it through the Marshall Program, starting in the 70s, the Deutschmark started to become very strong, and
Mhm.
the Japanese as well. And they had very strong currencies, and they still have very strong exporting business.
Though Germany and Japan was like this in the late, was it the 80s, maybe even some of the 90s, before China became sort of the manufacturing powerhouse. Japan was manufacturing a lot of stuff. But I guess one of the things that the U.S. sort of stands out for is its size. It has oceans on both sides, so it's not easily interfered with by other people, other powers. But also this, they have a mixture. Although people complain, like Trump was talking about this, and I think Reagan was talking about it, the manufacturing workers, the working class, like the hands-on working uh, jobs and products that needed people physically to manufacture them, that was all outsourced in the late 80s, early 90s. And But the US has that that I guess what you call a selection, diversity of
Mm-hmm.
being able to manufacture, provide services, and innovate at the same time. So it's a trio of things that the United States economy has that many other economies and countries around the world don't have, for any number of reasons. I don't know. What do you see?
That is why the United States has been so successful, is the fact that historically speaking, it has been welcoming to some extent, not always perfect, not always ethical, but for migrants, or immigrants to just come and live and work in the United States. As much as the people may complain about having so many illegals, there was not even a real system for more than half of my ancestors who came to the States.
Yeah.
Obviously, not including the American Indian or African slave, but from Europe.
Yeah.
There was no system when they came. That was a later development in American history. And the fact that we still have so many people coming in, scientists, engineers, studying at university, and inventing things here, because they also like the fact that they know, for the most part, that they get a patent in the United States, it means something.
I'm reading this book called The Innovators. I can't remember. Was it Isaac Thompson? Some Walter Isaacson, I think who it is. I think he used to work for Time magazine. He might still. And he talks about how when the computer revolution started back in the after World War II,
Mhm.
before World War II for sure, that's when they started
Right.
developing the transistors and stuff like that. But it wasn't until the 50s, 60s that it really took off. Apparently, universities like Stanford and I think even MIT, I'm not sure if MIT has this, but they have patent offices where students and professors can walk in and this patent office helps them patent their innovation. I phenomenal. I mean, no wonder so many come out of there because it's just one office that you have to go visit.
Sputnik in 1957 put the fear of the Soviets really into Washington, D.C., and there was a major focus on science and mathematics at that time. And you see from that point, lots of programs set up to encourage students, scholarships, grants, what have you, funding for universities to do research, to get the technology out there, because we couldn't let the Ruskies put nuclear weapons in space. We couldn't let them get to the moon or this or that.
Yeah, and we see that now in China, of all things. Like a lot of people criticize the Chinese government for like some subsidies and stuff like that. And we've mentioned this before that China very much is following the pattern of other countries that did it before, notably the United States. And they are providing funding. Like if you are in AI, robotics, what else would it? Machine learning. So a lot of computerized stuff, automation. They will fund your company, and it's like you don't have to go to list on the stock market, which is what like the American dream is sort of to go list
Right.
take your company public and become the next Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk sort of thing. Here in China, it's a little bit different, but you can secure financing for those ideas. It's very bizarre though in China that it's for all the great ideas that they have for making life a lot better in terms of Mai and the Alipay bikes, the share bikes, none of them are making money. It's bizarre how none of them actually make money from their businesses. So they almost depend on subsidies rather than on the profits that they can generate from the people. Whereas like in the States, with that sort of the stock market and the venture capital funding, I mean, it's almost like a wolf's den. Like if you're not making money, they actually, well, this is what Facebook and all those companies are criticized for. A lot of them don't make money, but they're getting huge valuations, and people are going, "Why are you worth that much? You're not doing anything."
Tesla. Tesla is the perfect example of that. Um, their PE ratio is infinite. Okay, it's infinite. Um, and it's all just in the belief that somehow Elon Musk is going to be able to make it profitable. And over time, for example, California, going into effect this year, in fact, their trucks, the semi trucks that bring in products from other places, they have to meet certain requirements. And I think by 2030 or 2035, all vehicles sold in this country, sold in California, must be electric vehicles or other kinds. They cannot burn gasoline, and they cannot burn, I can't think of the other thing that
LNG or natural gas, diesel.
Diesel, right. Can't be
Right.
diesel, can't be normal gas, must be electric or other. And and so, the government's
Big
going to make it so
right.
it's
So
profitable.
there was another guy who was I think it was Jordan Peterson who got upset with the Canadian government for saying that all vehicles had to be electric by 2035 or something like that. And I guess this is sort of the popular criticism. Uh, there are two other major shifts that I think happened before with vehicles where the government mandated something. And I don't know which one would be better, electricity or petrol, given that we still have 15 years before this sort of plays out. But number one, I always wondered why all the gas pumps in Canada always had unleaded in it. Like that was bizarre. Well, that was because before they used to sell leaded gasoline, and it was like that stuff was proven to be very bad. So government said you can't do that anymore. The second thing in my lifetime that I remember is because, and which led to me, actually didn't lead to me, but I couldn't drive the car I grew up driving because the government said these cars are being grandfathered out. You cannot drive a car that's older than this if it doesn't pass safety inspections. Even if it does, there have to be certain emission controls on it and stuff like that. And we're talking like old beater cars, sort of thing that they looked unsafe. And so I kind of looking at it with the petrol vehicle, the shift to the electric, I wonder if that's something as well that we're seeing, is that there's that shift going from petrol or fossil fuel based to electric. But I think we do have to make it clear that fossil fuels aren't as bad as people say they are, but electricity also isn't as easy as people say it is because they still have to generate that electricity from somewhere.
Well, there's also been power outages throughout the United States over this last winter, and
Right.
people who had electric vehicles couldn't go anywhere. And what if earlier, during the coronavirus times in LA, if the government thought that you were violating some of the ordinances that they had decided upon dealing with the coronavirus, they cut off your water. Oh, wow. So you're setting this up where now you could have a couple gallons of gasoline, which could take you 50, 60, or if you have a few more, maybe a couple hundred miles.
Yeah.
Now you'll have nothing. You will depend on the goodwill of the government if
Yeah.
you want to go anywhere.
And do you drive very much?
I drove for all of 3 or 4 months in my life,
That's
and
it?
that was it.
Do you still have a driver's license?
Oh, good heavens, no.
No,
No.
so you don't, so then when because you're traveling, I think the last time we spoke, you were in Georgia still, but you had
Yes.
given us your travel itinerary, and you've given it to me again because you've traveled all throughout the States and you're off to Kenya very
Yep.
shortly. What sort of dog, you just use your passport and that's it? Or do you have a secondary ID? I mean, you don't need to give us full
Oh no,
details, of
I
course.
no, that's fine. The So you may recall that, oh no, you this was before we worked for the same place in China. The reason I left the first time was because my passport had been stolen.
Oh, no.
And it was a very complicated story, but I wound up going back to the United States and I didn't envision actually returning.
Right.
Um, when I was coming to fly here Sunday night in North Carolina, I'm at the airport and I go to the kiosk, I get my tickets because I don't like saving an electronic device because if the battery goes out, okay, I will, as long as I have a choice, I will never accept an electronic ticket. I always prefer the paper because if for whatever reason I can't show electronically, I'm SOL.
What happens
Uh,
if you lose the ticket?
well, you can always print another one because you have identification or whatever is necessary.
Which
That
requires electricity.
you're at the airport. Okay,
That's right. I
all
got
you
you.
do in my case was go to the American Airlines desk.
Yeah.
But what happened is I'm headed towards security and I can't find my passport. Now I am remarkably meticulous. I've been doing this almost 20 years, but I can't find it. And I search again and again, and I can't find it. But I
Panic.
knew I had it earlier in the day, and I couldn't
Yeah.
have lost it at the airport. So I figured, okay, it must have fallen out back on the farm, but it doesn't matter. In the United States, you could also travel by a state ID, and
Yeah.
technically my California state ID is still good. I got it in 2018. But also, the United States issues what's called a passport card. And with the passport card, as an American citizen, I am allowed by car or by boat to enter Canada or Mexico. And it
With
also allows
with
me
a
to
state
enter
or a
most.
passport card. So you have a
Mhm.
passport and a passport card.
Right, right. And they
What?
and so the passport card is very specific. It can be used as an ID just in general in the United States if you need to show ID. But also, if I'm going in Canada, Mexico by car or by boat, or alternatively, most of the Caribbean countries, if you're on a cruise or something like that, you can also show this card, and you're in.
Okay.
You don't need a passport if you fly. To be clear, it doesn't work if you fly.
So how do you get the passport card?
You just apply for it at the same time. And I don't remember.
Okay.
It was 20, it was maybe 40 or $50. I don't remember. But it's a good backup to have.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. How does it expire? Like, does it have the same
It's 10
expiry?
years.
It's 10 years. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's even better. Yeah.
And
Um,
and what I did then was I figured out the situation. I figured, okay, my father would have more than 2 weeks to mail it to me, my
yeah.
passport. So I was secure. Let's get through security. Let's do a thorough check through my stuff and message my father. I get through, I get through security and showing
It's
my passport
in
card.
your hand. You've been holding your passport the entire time, right? And you forgot to
Well, no,
look.
no, it was in my, it's right. You have a system and you don't screw around with your system. I always keep my passport in a certain pocket.
Yeah.
It was in a different pocket
Oh, yeah.
in my jacket.
That's led me to have issues as well. I actually bought this one passport booklet cover thing. It's like an RFID protector case,
Good
but
idea. Yes.
I didn't buy it for that reason. I bought it because it's so big that you know where it is. You know which pocket it's in because I used to wear cargo pants a lot because I was
Oh,
traveling, which
yes.
are great
Yeah.
with the zippers and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I don't know if you go I don't know, wash your clothes or something and you forget to check, you might not have a passport anymore. So it's a bit of an issue. And I made sure. So that's one of the reasons I bought this booklet is to make sure that you do the general pat, even if you don't, and you just throw your pants in, you're going, wow, that's kind of heavy. That I didn't poop my pants this time, did I?
Mm.
You're able to determine whether or not there is something in the pants, and usually it's your passport. So pens and lipstick and USB drives, most of those can be replaced. Although I mean, I'm not sure you want to be washing USB drives; those won't survive, depending
Yeah.
on what's on them, of course. But passport, yeah, that's something I've had to make sure that I don't lose or get or wash again. That was a painful circumstance.
Really?
Yeah, that happened back in was it 2017 or so. It went through the wash and caused all sorts of mafana, all sorts of troubles for me. But anyway,
Boy.
that was actually the year that my father had passed away, and I went back to Canada, and so there was a whole series of events that happened within 1 week that basically changed my life, I guess you could say. Like 100% normalcy and then not normal, but completely normal because passports get washed all the time.
Yeah.
Uh, Parents die, people travel, and people lose jobs. That just happened all at once. But as a result, I got to meet people like you. No word of a lie. No word of a lie at all. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. It was that the job change allowed me to, well, the loss of job allowed me to look at other opportunities, and other ones did pop up. I did have to come back to China though because all my stuff was there. I
Right.
literally had left Beijing with a backpack, and th- by the time when I was in Canada and I was traveling, I went actually up through Russia at that time. And when I returned to Canada, I'd still only had a backpack with me. So all my stuff, everything was all my backup identification, China. Everything was in China. It was so
Oh,
I had to get a colleague at the time to go into my apartment, which was trouble enough because he had to talk to the security guard because it's like, oh, what do you mean you're going to go into this guy's apartment? You know, you're not him, and they actually do take it quite seriously. And I'm not sure if I had to call him or what, but I had to give him I had to send him a message like saying, yeah, it's okay, go in, let him in. He needs to get these documents and they have to be mailed to me. And so that's what he ended up doing. It was like my driver's license and stuff like that. So,
sure.
but, yeah,
Yeah.
my fond lie tells you it was quite the experience. Not anything I wish for other people to go through because it's trying to say the least. I don't know. But focus on the good stuff that did happen as a result. So you're traveling around. You're in California right now. I guess the current modern question is, what's going on? Are you okay?
It's California. So, no, things haven't been okay for quite a while.
Okay, well, I think that's a different argument in terms of the news weather broadcasts that are going
Uh,
on at the moment.
well, the last time I was here for a prolonged period of time was back in this was 2017, 2018. And like within a week of me arriving, a week or 2 weeks of me arriving, Simi Valley is in a valley. Go figure. There, it was the worst brush fire season in years.
Fresh
Literally,
fire?
brush
What?
brush
Oh,
fires.
brush fire. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because the grass gets so dry, and almost just a slight spark can send things into flames. And no joke, there were 5 different wildfires around Simi Valley, and like 3 of them were near the major highways. So we were trapped, but not trapped. I
Okay.
mean, it was just a strange feeling. Wind gusts of up to what was that? 80 kilometers an hour, 50 miles per hour. And that was like that for 4 or 5 days. Right now, there's been a lot of wind and rain here
So you
in
had
California.
fire, and then
No,
you had a lot of rain.
well, yeah, that's so in California, that's what usually happens towards the end of the summer and going into the fall. There's a lot of brush fires because the California government has been doing for 35, 40 years is they don't allow small brush fires, natural ones, to occur. All right. See, that's sort of the thing is that small ones would naturally occur, clear some brush or other things, and would make soil. And
Right.
this has been going on for thousands of years. All right. Well, what happens is you get all this accumulated dry brush, and you can't put out all the fires at once.
They don't do controlled burns?
Not not in this area, and I guess the farmers must. Okay, I
Yeah.
guess the farmers must in the Central Valley, but we're a bit far from there, and these fires are all around LA and also up north near Sacramento.
Right. Wait, when you say valley, it sounds like there's a very large valley. I mean,
Oh, the
how big
Central
is this valley?
Valley?
Yeah,
Central,
I've never been there, so I don't know.
okay, the Central Valley runs, so California is sort of shaped like this.
Yeah.
It goes north to south, and then it has a bend turning east into the United States. And the Central Valley follows along that. And at the top of it is basically Sacramento, which is the capital. And
Okay.
then at the other end, I'm not sure if there's a major city down there, but a lot of the food that you hear about, almonds or oranges, things like this, they come from the Central Valley.
Oh, okay.
And the and it has less and less and less water every year because Los Angeles is allotted a certain amount, and
Okay.
through the aqueducts and aquifers it gets here, but they aren't good at managing how much they use, and they would prefer to tell the farmers how much to use rather than the Los Angeles. I don't know what they call themselves, but it's not good. It's really not good in this state.
Why is the Central Valley so fertile? Is it because of these fires and stuff like that? Like, why is so much of our produce come from there? United
Um,
States produce.
I Well, so it's not that a lot of produce particularly comes there. It's just a lot of expensive. Okay.
Oh,
There's the thing. If you look at all of the states, you'll see, California has the highest value of agricultural goods. So that means we must get most of our food from it. No, 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 no.
okay.
Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, wheat, corn, pigs.
Yeah. Okay.
California, nuts, almonds, cashews, things like this, really expensive. And they need a lot of water.
Yeah.
And I lived in California from 88 to 96, from when I was in kindergarten until through seventh grade. And it always seemed like California was in a drought. Okay, California's always in a drought. And so it's mad that all of these nuts are grown here.
Yeah.
Um,
Ah. Wow.
and then the lawns. I mean, people have lawns even in Palm Springs or out in the desert, 100, 200 miles east of Los Angeles. It's
And they water their grass, which is I think surprises a lot of
oh,
people when they travel there.
my cousins told me that there's a local ordinance now in Simi Valley, new this year or last year, where they are paying you per square foot for putting rocks onto your yard instead of having grass. It's a one-off,
What's next?
apparently.
Sand. Living in the desert. I don't know which I'd rather have grass. Well, I've recently invested in a lot of plants around my apartment. But they're mostly cactuses. So that way I can't kill them as easily. But I'm looking around and there are a few that have died. I think it's because going into winter and then I do like watering things and I don't think they like the amount of water I was getting. A lot of bamboo as well because
Right.
that doesn't die very easily. But anyway, so okay, you're alive and California's still ticking and in a drought, not in, well, always in a drought, moderating its water supply, but you're only going to be there for another week and a half or so. You're taking off to Kenya.
And yes,
You, the global traveler around the world. Okay, so from Georgia, the country, to the United States, you've flown around there and you're now in California and you're leaving Kenya. You leave in a week and a half or so?
correct. 10 days.
Okay. Flying first class?
Please.
Would you fly first class?
Um, I have flown first class once. What happened was I was on a flight that was overbooked, and I politely raised my hand as a volunteer. And so I got to go first class.
Politely. Can't put your hand up that fast. that fast. Faster. I'll go.
Well, most people
Please.
don't want to do it. Okay, most
Why
people,
not?
right? Because usually people have arrangements for where they're going to be. In this case, I think they also paid for me to stay a night, overnight at a hotel or something like that. And so, a lot of people have plans, meetings, other things.
Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah. Right. Okay. So you're going to be flying cattle class. Is that what it is?
well,
Economy?
but what's important here is I'm not flying. Okay, so in my experience, if you're flying one of the brands which are American,
Right.
Delta isn't bad. I've flown Delta quite a few times internationally. Delta isn't bad. No, I will be flying Qatar Air.
Qatar. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and they're good. Qatar's, in my experience, Qatar's been good. Asiana's been good. Air Korea, Korean Air.
Korean
Um,
Air. Yeah, I've always liked flying with them. They're very
yeah,
nice.
and the Turkish Airlines also.
Okay.
Emiratis isn't bad.
Well,
So I'm quite happy with that. I'll be flying Qatar, and
yeah.
it's flying from LA to Doha and then Doha to Nairobi. So only one, right? Only one transfer, which is good.
How
All
long
to
is the flight from Los Angeles to Doha?
16 hours.
Wow, that's okay, good.
And the cost altogether was about $560, which
What?
isn't bad at all. No,
American.
all from LA to Nairobi.
Right.
And it's about 560 altogether. And there's a breakdown. The airline is charging me only 250 or $260. The majority of it is taxes and fees
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
the different governments. It's
Times by 7
extraordinary.
and you get the so that's about 3,500 renminbi.
And I get two, for what it's worth to me, I get two pieces of luggage each up to 50 pounds.
Why is it so cheap? That seems extraordinarily cheap. Is it
Uh,
because you're taking like Los Angeles to Doha? I can't imagine. It's probably sold out for some reason. Although I don't know how. This is the fantastic thing about going through Los Angeles and New York is that people are going to all sorts of parts of the world all the time, and you get on the airplane, you're like, who are you people? Like, where are you going? Like, I know I'm lost in life, but like, don't you have jobs and stuff? And it's like, well, yeah, they do have a job, but they have to go over there. They're visiting family, or they're catching a what do you like a connecting flight sort of thing. Like that.
right.
That's also. But
Well,
do you know why it's so cheap? Like, not just in terms of the fee structure, but in terms of why were you able to get such a good deal on the ticket?
I think, well, there's several reasons. What you have to remember that for especially the Arab airlines, they are state subsidized, and that may contribute to it. And maybe they don't have to make as big a profit. And not like Delta and all the other American airlines, they are so much in debt. It's not even funny. Uh, but they are heavily subsidized to make them competitive. And that may be a part of it, that the government doesn't really care, that it wants to guarantee that maybe in the future, as maybe some their acquisitions, mergers, and then some that just completely fail, that
Yeah.
they'll be the ones left standing. So it
Hmm.
could be long-term focus.
So it's state
Subsidize them
subsidies that
now,
are basically
right?
making the
Subsidize
ticket.
them now. Let there become fewer airlines, and probably prices will go up, and then later they can raise the prices.
Who are you buying your tickets through? Like, do you use one of these ticket aggregators like Skyscanner or Cheapo Air?
Well, it depends where I'm going,
Okay.
and because I fly a lot of Delta, as I mentioned earlier, or I try to, or within their alliance, because I also have a Delta American Express Delta credit card, and because I've accumulated miles and other things, I have flown across the Pacific from America to China, I think 3 times for free over
Wow. Impressive.
over my 15 years of
That's
using it.
one flight every 5 years.
And so, that's not chump change. And it
And that you're
also,
flying Los Angeles to Doha. I mean, that's 16 hours. That's across the world, basically. It is
I will have circumnavigated the world
completely.
by the time I get to Kenya, because Georgia is just slightly east of
Right.
Kenya.
So technically, in your biography on Wikipedia, you can put that you have circumnavigated the world. I have circumnavigated, Danny Gowen circumnavigated the world. And it's like, but the historians need to make it clear he wasn't flying the airplane. There were long layovers along the way. It's
Oh, and
all about
well, this is the
context.
second time I've done it.
Right. Yeah, I think I have finally circumnavigated the world. I think.
Ah,
Yes, because well, back in 2017 I had to get back to Canada, and
yeah.
from where I was, I had to fly through Latvia, and then from Latvia it was Riga is in Latvia, right?
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
Riga, Latvia. That landed in Toronto. I think I can't remember that flight. That was crazy. Then Toronto to Winnipeg. So that was
Right.
quite a distance, but I finally had circumnavigated the whole world by that time. It only took me like 9 years to do, and I was not flying the planes. My big thing is that I like to travel by ground, so like by rail or by
Mhm.
bus. I find bus gives you a very gritty, earthy feel of a place. I mean, you meet a lot of people that you're like, and this is why most people don't take the bus. The train in Canada is very expensive. States, I don't know. Other places around the world, very cheap. And it's much more convenient than other places and easier to use than buses because train stations are huge. Bus stations are usually like a parking lot. You're like, what's this? Oh, it's a bus station. Okay. So, and unlike and airplanes, like airplane stations, airports are very high security. So they're, I mean, you know when you're going into an airport, but a train station, a little bit. Bus stations, you could walk right by it and you wouldn't even know what it is.
Amtrak,
I've heard.
passenger train service is forgotten. And also, what needs to be remembered is that the basic structure of the railroad system in America was completed not long after the American Civil War. 1867, you could get on a train from New York and get to San Francisco,
How
right?
long did it take back? It was a week journey, I think, back then,
Oh,
right?
longer than that.
Really?
Yeah, it's longer than that. But on the other hand, I had taken Amtrak from LA to New York, or vice versa. I don't remember exactly. 3 times,
How
and
is it?
um, and now mind you, this was all after like 2005. There is no Wi-Fi. Even the last time I did it in 2017 or 2018, there's no Wi-Fi on going that far. I mean, if you're going from California to like Washington, or you're going from Boston to DC, some of those lines will have Wi-Fi. But otherwise, be ready unless you've got Wi-Fi on your phone or what have you. You're gonna. It's nice for me, right? I'm
Yeah,
completely disconnected from the world, and you have to go through Chicago. There's
right.
no direct ticket as such. There's New York to Chicago, Chicago to LA, and vice versa, or other
How
parts.
much? How much for that trip total?
Um,
Given that you're a very frugal man, I know you're not like drinking champagne for breakfast.
it was each of those times it was around $300, I guess. It
That's
was
it?
probably a
Are you
little bit
kidding
more
me?
expensive than a flight, but not always. Usually it is, okay, to be clear, usually Amtrak is. And then obviously for that low, you're not you're bringing your own food unless you're buying food at the
Yeah,
and you do
but
have
you can disembark and buy food too, right? At the train stations.
right, but there aren't as many as you might think.
Okay.
And sometimes it's just like 5 minutes. I have an Albuquerque public library card because there's the one place where we actually stayed for like 2 or 3 hours, and the library is right next to the train station. So I got off the train and I wanted to use the internet, and I couldn't use the internet, so I had a library card, and I explained it to one of the workers there, and she said, "It's not required for you to be a local to have a library card. You just have to put in your name and show me your ID." Okay. And then
Good.
a year or two later, I was able to use the internet, and not have to speak to anybody because I had a library card.
There you go. So then, how do you prepare for a trip like that? Because I was thinking that like I know some train stops are very short, but there are some like you know which ones are going to be longer, and
Yes, of
when you can
course.
like restock your how many? I guess the question is like how long did you have to stock up for?
Uh, so if you're going to be buying some food in Chicago, then the longest bit is from LA to Chicago, and that be should be 3 or 3.5 days. So remember, Amtrak is not priority. Coal, cows, anything else has priority.
Right.
And so
Okay.
recently I heard about this guy who was going from North Carolina or Virginia to Florida. And it was supposed to be a 10-hour or 15-hour trip. It took him and his family like 35 hours. their wait was longer than the trip itself was supposed to be,
Right.
because they had to go on an alternative track because of whatever happened. There was a train or a few trains which had higher priority. Maybe there was an accident. Who knows what happened?
Yeah.
But they had priority, and so they had to switch. So if it's all good,
Unlike
um,
here in China, where like I'm not sure how it works because I think I would almost say that the people are the priority, or at least they have their own dedicated lines. Like it's not just the high speed, but there are so many people that take the train all over the place that those like the people trains keep on. Don't they just attach everything to they don't attach everything together, do they? Like if they're shipping they wouldn't ship coal with people, obviously. Like it wouldn't be
no,
like
no,
carts of coal afterwards. But I know well, the people are enough. I think they'd have 16 cars sold out leaving Beijing, and
yeah,
that thing will stay full until like maybe whole hot 8 hours later. But it's like it's not. Maybe after the first stop, there might be some room to sit down, but then the next stop it'll refill, sort of thing, and that's like throughout the whole country. I'm not sure how they ship stuff here. I know they ship stuff by rail, but it's not going through places like Beijing, so we don't really see it here.
I never thought about that. But yeah, that's a good point.
And I guess with the States, with those rail lines being laid down so long ago, whereas China, the people, they doing the same sort of commodity shipments 100 years ago that they are doing today, or like how are they moving all that stuff around? I don't know. It's a very good question.
Yeah,
We should look into that. So $300, New York to Los Angeles. That sounds like a fantastic trip. How long did it take you?
it took 4.5 days, I think. I
That's
got lucky.
it?
There were no long periods of time where we had to wait for other trains or anything like that. But that just happened. That's just roll of the dice.
Right.
Again,
Okay.
that's really just roll of the
It could
dice.
be 4.5 days. It could be 8 days.
Yeah, you have to, if you're going to be doing this, you have to understand
Don't book your meetings.
that you're not getting to wherever you're going. You're not taking a flight immediately. All
Right.
right, you don't need to be on flight. You're not going to your wedding, right? Nothing like this. Nothing
Now,
important.
do those trains, do they leave the station usually on, like, is it a scheduled departure? Because, like in Canada, if I were to take the train across, first of all, it would not cost $300. It costs like $1,000 to go across from Vancouver to like across. Actually, it costs $1,600. Vancouver to Toronto, I think. Maybe it's more. I can't remember. It's stupidly expensive. But they only leave once a week or twice a week. It's like
Oh,
on a Sunday and on a Thursday sort of thing.
it's more frequent than that. Amtrak is one of the leeches, if you will, of the American people. The amount of subsidies they get from the government, and the way that they get their subsidies is that they also promise to try to keep prices relatively low. Now, again, I haven't looked at the Amtrak prices going across country since the coronavirus started. So
Right.
it's been three
So
years. So it
they
may
might
be up quite a bit. I don't know, but I couldn't
the
imagine it being more than 400 or 500.
I guess the other thing though is that the United States has more rail lines than Canada does. Like when I say that it leaves on Sunday, it's because there's only one peopled rail line that goes across Canada. There might be a second one for transportation, but um, basically there's two lines, and that's all it is across Canada. There's not very many, let's put it that
Oh,
way. Very, very few. So if you take that train, again, you are not priority. You get to wait for all the coal and everything else, that's the cars and the oil that's getting shipped across Alberta, but or the car like well the cars have to wait for you, but yeah, as a passenger on a train in Canada, you will take a while to get to your destination for many many reasons. You can take the bus; it's quicker, but again, very earthy feeling to the bus. Very with the people. You're with the people on the bus.
yes.
Have you ever taken the bus before?
Greyhound. I have taken it in from Indiana, which is between Ohio and Pennsylvania, not too far from Detroit or Chicago,
Yeah.
Indianapolis, down to North Carolina. I've also taken it from Indiana to Kansas.
What
And
do you
I've
do on
done,
all these trips? I mean, like, what, this is a lot of traveling that you do long distance journeys for days at a time.
well, with the Greyhound buses, they have Wi-Fi, and the Wi-Fi is pretty good.
Yeah.
The Wi-Fi is pretty good on Greyhound. The seats are fairly comfortable. It reclines well enough. The seat belts work very well.
Toilets can be a
That,
little bit iffy.
oh, good heavens, I would never use a toilet on a Greyhound
Yeah, you
unless
wait.
you're the first person. Unless you're the first
Yeah,
person,
just hold it.
yeah, yeah.
Even though the bus station toilets aren't so good, it's just, at least you're not bouncing around, and who knows what that is over there anyway.
But I would strongly encourage people having ridden the Greyhound several times to not, because of how they wind up treating their customers. They exploit the fact that they are typically poor and they don't have the legal resources.
Oh,
They don't
right.
have the legal recourse. For example, I don't remember what the issue was specifically, but I don't even remember where I was headed. I think it must have been to Kansas. We the bus had to pull over for whatever reason. I don't remember why. The driver got out. He locked us in the bus. Okay, he locked us in the bus,
So no, no
which is a
one, no
real
one runs away.
danger. That is a
Yeah.
remarkable danger. If a fire started or somebody goes crazy in the bus, has a knife or whatever, all right,
There
he's
are
on his cell
emergency
phone.
windows. There are emergency windows.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, and I was sitting next to a window. They're
Yeah.
all emergency windows. Okay,
Yeah. Okay.
on
So, I mean,
Greyhound, they're
they
all, yeah.
have had experience with those sort of insane moments. But yeah, if someone, it's not a very comfortable feeling anyway. And I don't know. I thought traveling by bus would be better than it is, but it's a cheap ticket in most countries, and it's a place, and in a lot of places, especially, well, in Korea, it was very well organized, and you could go to more places on bus than you could on train. But Korea is a very small country. China, I don't think I've ever taken a long distance bus here. I think I've talked to my girlfriend, and she's like, "No, it's just not going to happen. We're taking the train," and she hates taking the train only because, as she said, smoking, 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 snoring, snoring, snoring.
Vietnam. Vietnam is a great place for buses too. Very well organized buses going everywhere.
Right, Southeast Asia. Vietnam was my introduction to night buses,
Yes,
and that hurt.
wonderful stuff. That
Yeah, that
hurts.
hurt. Oh my goodness, the roads are terrible. You're not sleeping very well on those buses. I don't know what
I
kind of melatonin you're taking, but I mean, or sleeping pills. Like I don't take sleeping pills, generally because I used to drink a little bit more, but even the alcohol couldn't knock me out to put me onto that, like to get me a good sleep on those buses.
we Tao, my Vietnamese ex-wife, and I, we lived in Nha Trang, and it was about 8 hours, 8 or 9 hours by bus from Nha Trang to
Like
Saigon,
on, yeah,
and we must have done that probably like 10 times, no exaggeration, because we wouldn't take the
overnight.
train and we weren't going to fly. And so, over the course of a year and a half or 2 years, yeah, I'd say 10 times, five round
Overnight or
trips or
during the
something.
day?
Overnight. Oh, always overnight.
Yeah,
And I thought the sleep was, well, so this was 2014, 2015, 2016.
yeah.
And maybe it's different when you were doing it.
I was there 2010 or so.
Okay, so those 4 years may have made a big difference too.
I don't know. Knowing Vietnam, I don't know. I don't think they modernized that quickly, especially. I don't think bus services overnight were prioritized in the development of technology. I just kind of don't. I think it's one of those technologies like it still runs. Why fix it, sort of thing. And I don't blame them for this. I mean, it's just the
Right.
reality that buses they're built to last. Most of them are anyway. But so once you get to Kenya, how will you be traveling around? Are you mostly on foot? I actually know one other guy who just left China, and he is in Ethiopia now.
Well, I'm going to Kenya, among other things, and I will be spending my time with my girlfriend who
Right.
lives there in Nairobi, and she drives,
Okay.
and she's in charge of planning. So I'll be able
Mercedes,
to.
BMW, Porsche, Jaguar, Ferrari, Lamborghini.
All I know is that it has four tires. Apparently, they have air in them. She's got a gas tank of some kind that has gas in it,
Oh,
and it goes. Oh,
okay.
and that the driver's seat is on the right side of the
Ah, so
vehicle.
it's like the
They drive
British
like the
style.
British. Yes,
Yeah. Okay. And how long are you going to be in Kenya for? You don't know yet.
right. I don't know yet. As an American, Americans are allowed to stay for up to 90 days. And there was a, I had to let them know I'm coming online and I had to send in some forms or other things like that. But their system is amazing. Okay.
Hmm.
It is remarkably simple. I had to provide this information, I had to provide that information, right? It's all on the internet, on the Kenyan site. And I also had to send pictures like of her invitation letter to me, a picture of her ID, picture of the information page on my passport, and what have you. Anyway,
What do you mean an
I,
invitation letter from her?
well, if you're
Like an
in this,
email? Hey, are you coming to Kenya?
uh, well, oh, you've never had to do this or see this before.
Not on
Um,
personal, only for because I've only ever had to have an invitation letter. Oh, maybe Russia needed one. Good question. But I didn't. I went to an agency and they provided it for me. Maybe
okay.
that's what it was. Okay. Yeah.
In my
But yeah, go ahead,
situation,
explain.
so my situation, she had to do that because I wasn't going to be staying at a hostel or hotel. If I'm staying
Okay.
at a hostel or hotel, then in that case, excuse me, I just provide a photocopy, a picture, a screenshot of my booking, right?
Right.
Confirmed reservation. Because I'm not, I had to send that. And I had failed to send something. Now I do this the December 30th. Okay, I guess it must have been December 30th, which was a Friday.
Hmm.
31st is, yes, that's right. So I sent it the 30th. And it turns out, though I didn't know, they had actually sent me, now I sent it the 30th, and it's already probably the early morning of, oh no, it's the late night of the 30th. They actually sent me an email, which I didn't see at that time, telling me I was short a document.
Okay.
All right. And they, and so I come back on the 2nd of January, and it is around noon in North Carolina. So it's about 8 at night in Kenya. I see the email that I'm missing something. I upload it, and then I confirm that I've uploaded it. And within an hour, I got confirmation that everything was fine, and I just show up.
Good. Well, I mean, it is their work time when it's evening time in the
Well,
United States.
9 or 10 at night, and
Not in
this
Kenya. Or
no,
are
it
you
wasn't
saying?
10.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah, it was nine
you're
or
right.
10 at night in Kenya.
Okay.
So there were still people doing that. Not only that, it's during the New Year time, and I don't know how familiar you are, but in some countries there's prolonged breaks during that time. And
Can't
Aching
imagine
had
Kenya would really take New Year.
Aching had
Do they take
explained.
it?
See, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Aching had explained to me that basically from the middle of December to the middle of January, give or take a few days, not much is going on. And government officials, government workers, are notorious for taking it
Taking
easy, as
long
it were.
times off. Yeah. Well, that's kind of like your university system too. I think one of the downfalls of becoming a working people is that you miss the run up to Christmas, and this is very much for like a Christian country, a Western country that
Right.
follows the Christian faith, or Christian holidays such as Christmas, but then also New Year's, because they like mid December, you people are starting to talk about like where they're going to go. what, gifts or whatever, sometimes how cold it is outside. And then, you get into the whole Christmas atmosphere. And then after that, it's New Year's, because those are two big holidays that are stacked back to back, sort of thing. And so it's not until like the first week of January. And as a student, once mid-December is over, you're like, I'm free, 3 weeks, no thinking about school anymore. And as a university instructor, you're also like, no more thinking about any of this preparations, and hopefully I remember to download my classes before I actually have to start it. I'll prepare for class on January 3rd, sort of thing, right?
Yes, exactly.
But then, and even still getting into the new year, it's sort of a restart. It's very gentle going in. Being a working person at an office, it's like Christmas Eve. You're like, yeah, so still got to work. 8:30. Knockoff time is 4:30. And then what? I mean, we'll see you on December 26th. you know, it's almost defeating sometimes, to tell you the truth. But I don't know. Does Kenya have any big celebrations at all, other than like Christmas and New Year's?
It is predominantly Christian country. There is a sizable Muslim population, to be certain. And
Yeah.
there's also a Hindu population because, like a lot of the other British former colonies in Africa, there were Indians who were forcibly or otherwise settled
Taken to a
in
new place.
in Africa.
Right.
And Easter, Ching, I know specifically mentioned Easter to me. And also the Kenyan national holiday for its own independence.
When is that?
I don't remember.
Right.
I don't remember.
And Easter, when's Easter this year? April something.
Okay, yeah, either late March or sometime in April.
I know, because there's two different. No, I don't know. There's two calendars though. Like the Catholic Church and the Christian Church and the Orthodox Church, they have
Right.
separate Easter celebrations about a week or a couple weeks apart. I don't know. Anyway, are you missing China at this time? Spring Festival. Do you pay attention to the Spring Festival?
Do I pay attention to Spring
No,
Festival?
you don't. I mean, I guess because China is shutting down at the moment, you can see there's fewer people overall. Although it is Sunday right now, so it's quiet anyway. But I think the kids actually went back to school at the beginning of January, which I thought was weird, because I'm like, why are you going back to school before Spring Festival? That shouldn't
Well,
happen until February, right?
well, um, what I can tell you, for example, is the middle schools in Qinhuangdao, they're not starting until middle of February.
Okay, that
Um,
makes more sense. Maybe I got my information wrong. I was more looking at university semester starts.
from what I know, my students, their Chinese classes ended by the end of last month,
Yeah.
and that we're just waiting to hear whether it starts. It's either supposed to start, I think, on the 20. I'll check here. On the 20th or the 27th of February.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll see. I work tomorrow and on Tuesday and on Wednesday and on Thursday. And I think we have a meeting on Friday that I have to attend as well.
Is it actually going to be face to face or is it going to be over
No, I
Zoom?
hope not. I kind of love working online nowadays. I'm not. Some people were complaining, not necessarily for this company, but I've read newspaper articles that people were missing the office because they didn't have that banter or the water cooler conversation. And I'm
Hmm.
sitting here going, that's not my issue. My issue is that I don't leave my apartment or my compound like for days at a time. I
Right.
realized this. I actually forced myself to go out to get coffee the other day because I'm like, I should probably see if the rest of the world is still standing. I mean, I can see it out my window. I live on a decent floor where I can see that, well, that part of the world is still there, but I'm not sure about the other part of the world. So I had to go check that. But recently, I've had this renewed optimism and hope and drive and desire to study Chinese. And so, what I've been doing is I've booked using a program, italki. So
Hmm.
I've
Yes.
booked italki and WeChat. I have this lady on WeChat that I talk to. I have 3 teachers now. I used to be adamant in not using a teacher, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I am using teachers. Tuesday is going to be my writing class. Wednesday is my topical conversation class. So like social media, how to read the different characters of an APP. And then Thursday is my just communication class as well. And they're all like half-hour long. That's beautiful. I love half-hour classes. I mean, it's just enough to keep you interested, but not short enough you're like, what happened sort of thing. And so, yeah, all that being said, I don't leave my apartment, and if I had to commute to work back and forth, it would demand more of my time, which meant I'd have to spend time making food, getting dressed, and coming home and like doing that whole transition period, which can be difficult. I don't. Do you miss working in an office? Long pause.
I was going to say, I with our job, I really don't consider that office so much.
Right.
I really didn't. Okay, I appreciate we all came to a centralized location,
Yeah.
but it wasn't very much. It wasn't unless you signed up for it, you didn't even have to,
Right.
right? You really didn't have to unless you signed up for it. So I never really considered it that way. Uh, do I
But
miss
even
it?
like, because you were talking about the difficulties of teaching online. Like, would you rather be teaching online instead, or going to like a quote unquote office to teach?
Well, when I was teaching, for example, for Liverpool University in Suzhou, it was at the university. And because it was the type of job where I did have to have an office, but it also allowed me to attend seminars or other things that are connected to the university. I
Yeah.
took a Chinese class and also a German class. I studied, magic tricks. And that wouldn't have been possible. That would not have been available to me if I had a job where I was always working from home.
Yeah.
So
Because no internet.
well,
It's a lot more difficult. I understand what you mean, because with the university, you walk onto campus, you see a poster, seminar, blah, blah, blah. You run into another professor in the hallway, conversation. Hey, are you going to such and such presentation? Internet, it's kind of like you have to take the initiative to go, what interesting seminars can I find for free on YouTube today?
but also, all right. So first, like with language, we've talked about studying language before,
Yeah.
and I think I fall into the camp that given a choice, it's better face to face.
Okay.
All right, given a choice, I think it's better face to face because students, in my opinion, it's easier to make sure that students are engaged, are
Hmm.
paying attention, and also the teaching quality. Honestly speaking, I don't plot out what I'm going to say. I know what activities or things we're going to do, but that's also why God invented a whiteboard so that I can write things on the board as I'm going.
Right.
I'm remarkably spontaneous, and none of right. I worked at a lot of places. I had feedback from a lot of people, and I was complimented on my use of whiteboard space, as much as that maybe is a dead thing now, right?
Hey,
Or smartboard. Okay,
yeah.
fine, smartboard, whatever you want to call it. And but I rely on that, and I think it's more challenging, and also students are more limited in the questions that they can ask and that you can easily answer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I really miss going, at least in the current job setup. I don't really miss going to the office, to tell you the truth, but that has to do with a lot more being efficient in my timing. Because when we moved to online work, it took away my time to study Chinese. and that really bothered me. And because Chinese is a very intense language, and unless you put in the time and the effort and the focus to learn it, and I've been going on about, I've had actually some people ask me about how to sort of start studying Mandarin or what's some of the best ways. And that one thing that pops into mind is to start writing first, like writing, and then, but yeah, just that's it. You have to start writing the characters as soon as possible, because that enables you to develop a familiarity with not just the characters and their sounds, but also I think it helps learn the culture. And when you're speaking with people, when you understand how a character is formed, you start to understand why they think in certain ways and why they deal with things in certain ways. And one of the examples is how you start at the top left of a character, and you start moving right. So it's like a clockwise motion
Hmm.
sort of thing, and direction, clockwise direction. And I've noticed with that, it's kind of like how Chinese people are very trusting a lot of times. And you can see that happen in the characters because they put characters and strokes above in certain places where there's expected to be another character underneath to support that character. That without without those two strokes intertwining, it would change the meaning of the character in total, right? For example, like Nian or Shu or the character Shi, like those characters all have lines that if you're beginning Chinese, they seem with like kan or zhi, like I will kan
Hmm.
dian shi,
Hmm.
will kan zhi dian shi. I'm watching a movie. They all look very similar, but when you start writing them out, you start seeing how they're created and how they all support each other. They integrate into a whole, into a harmonious, beautiful ideogram, pictograph, representation of a sound particle that you cannot guess on your own.
I find it that interesting because my advice would be different, but
What would you
I
say?
well, but now that I think about it, well, honestly, it's an issue in China. The fact that a lot of Chinese youth are failing writing class, that they don't know how to write because they just type pinyin and oh, it pops up on the computer
Yeah, it's very much a
or on the
classroom
cell phone or
subject now,
whatever,
isn't it? Yeah.
right? This has been a problem for 10 or 15 years now. And in terms of the utility of writing as a function of developing reading skills,
Yes.
okay, I completely agree. Like you were explaining, for example, Kan and Zhe and how they are somewhat similar. We're quite a bit similar, especially if you're just starting.
You're just starting, you're like, that's the same character. Nope,
And it's
different.
not. Yeah, yeah, and it's not. And doing that, yes, learning the radicals, especially learning the radicals and their typically associated meanings.
Meanings or even pronunciation, because sometimes
Right.
they add. Well, yeah, and this is where it gets very complicated talking about Chinese characters, because you cannot guess the sound, but if you've learned how to deconstruct the characters, later on you can make an educated guess about what sound it could be,
Right.
but you still need a tutor. You need some tutelage in order to actually figure out what it is, to know what it is. Um, the okay, so one of the reasons there's two main reasons. You talked about reading there. So the reason I encourage people to start writing with Chinese is not just to learn the characters, but so that they could write characters into their dictionaries. Because you're not going to use a Chinese dictionary anytime soon. And if you don't know the pinyin, because you don't know the pronunciation, it's very difficult, right?
Right. Yeah,
So my
yeah,
whole
yeah.
thing was to develop an independence of being able to write a Chinese character into a dictionary that would recognize it and give it to me.
You have
Uh,
to,
and the only other thing would be, again, reading. But with reading, again, two little digressions there. One, vocabulary development, and number two, I could take it with me. So like if you only rely on speaking, then you always need someone to speak with, right? But if you can read, then you can get a newspaper or a magazine or even on your APP, your app, and read something, right? So that was sort of learning to write a Chinese characters led to independence in reading, which helped build vocabulary, which then helped uh, speaking, which then kind of helped understanding what people were actually saying to me. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, yes, you should become proficient enough that when you see a new character, you probably have 90% of the stroke order right. Maybe not
Mhm.
perfect, but that you can write it that another Chinese can recognize it. Or if you're writing it into a program, it will pop up instead
Yes.
of showing you different characters. And that's where stroke order is really important because sometimes I've written characters and I can somewhat duplicate it, but it's not perfect. But the stroke order is all wrong and it
Yeah.
doesn't recognize it. It has
The
no clue what I wrote.
And I found with things like Baidu Translate, they're too quick. Like you have to write a lot quicker than some. Pleco takes its time, but
Mhm.
which Pleco is an e-dictionary that you can use for Chinese characters. But Baidu Translate, or even like all your keyboards, like on your cell phone, it starts guessing what you want to write right away, and it will auto fill it in. And you're going, that's give me another minute to figure out the next stroke. I need more time. I have found if you press and hold, or you like if you pause, then it won't autofill, and you can hold that line there until you're like, oh,
Oh,
okay,
okay,
now
I see.
I'll do it this way, and you make the next stroke that you know. So if you need that minute, don't take your finger off the screen, and that tends to help pause the autofill feature of most Chinese dictionaries.
I'll need to try that next time. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's getting late where you are, and I'm getting hungry where I am. So we're going to leave it there. Cheers. Thanks again, Danny. Hope you are doing well and traveling safe currently in the States.
Yes. It is all going well, and I hope things return to better situation in terms of the health of the Chinese people in the hospital situation, all that very soon.
Cheers. All right. Thanks, Danny. Safe
Sure.
travels. We'll talk again.
Likewise. Sure. Bye.
Bye bye.